Test 2. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a clerk at the information desk of a transport agency and a man asking for travel information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example which has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Morning. Thanks for calling Metro Link. Is there anything I can do for you?
Good morning. I would like to go to Harbour City tomorrow before 11 a.m. From Bayswater.
Well, for Bayswater?
Oh, no, from Bayswater, where I am currently living. But Harbour City is my destination.
Sorry, that means Bayswater to Harbour City. Which mode of transport do you prefer? By bus or train?
The destination is Harbour City, so Harbour City has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Morning. Thanks for calling Metro Link. Is there anything I can do for you?
Good morning. I would like to go to Harbour City tomorrow before 11 a.m. From Bayswater.
Well, for Bayswater?
Oh, no, from Bayswater, where I am currently living. But Harbour City is my destination.
Sorry, that means Bayswater to Harbour City. Which mode of transport do you prefer? By bus or train?
In fact, I have no preference, only if it brought me to harbour faster.
Well, if you take an express train, you'll be right in harbour within an hour from departure. Let's see. Yes, I recommend you to get on the 9:30 a.m. express.
Sounds perfect. So, at which station should I get on the train?
Helensdale is the nearest station to you.
Henlonsvale? Did you say that?
No, Helensdale. That's Helendale.
Then how can I get there fastest?
Let me see. Please wait a minute. I need to have a look. It says you probably have 2 options for the routes. The first one is the 7:06 bus from Bayswater Shopping Centre to Central Street. There will be another bus that can take you to the train station. Or, if you don't mind walking directly to Central Street, like a couple of kilometres, then you can take the bus there, bringing you to the train station.
Sure, but which bus is that, the one in Central Street?
The 7:02 will take... Oh, sorry, it's the 7:82 that will take you to the station.
I believe walking will be fine, so option 2 might seem better to me. When should I arrive at Central Street to catch the bus?
There are 2 buses that you can catch and get to the station on time. One just before 9 o'clock, one right after. Yet in the morning it might be better to take the earlier one, just in case of a traffic jam or something like that. I'd like to say the 8:55 one is more reassuring than the 9:05 one.
Sure, I don't want to miss the train, so the 5 to 9 one will be better. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10. One more thing. How much would the fares cost?
Well, the bus is $1.80 in cash, and the train is $10 each way. But do you have a travel link card?
No, but I may get one before tomorrow.
All right. If you have the card, you can pay considerably less. The bus will cost you $1.50, and the train to Harbour... Sorry, wait, it will still cost you $10 because it is during rush hour in the morning, I'm afraid. Yet, if you could return at an off-peak time...
What do you mean by that?
All right. If you could begin your returning journey before 5 in the afternoon, or later than 7:45, 7:45 in the evening.
In fact, my plan is that I won't start to go back home until 8 o'clock anyway.
Then you can save a lot of cash using your travel link card. You did mention that you were planning to buy one, didn't you?
Yes, today. Maybe later. I'll pick one up.
It means with cash it would cost you $10, but if with your card you will only pay $7.15 for returning.
Thank you.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
Yes. In fact, I would like to know if the Travel Link card supports ferry services.
If the ferry services is Harbour City ferries that connect the northern and southern banks, then yes. They are commuter ferries. A one-way trip costs $4.50, but with the Travel Link card you will enjoy a 20% discount, and the cost will be $3.55.
So, $3.55 for it. What about the tour boats?
You mean those ferries going upriver on sightseeing tours for tourists? No, they do not belong to the Travel Link company, and they only take cash and credit cards.
Oh, I see. So, I may believe that you might not know how much they cost for one tour?
Actually, I do know. I took a friend to the trip upriver just last week. We decided to go on an afternoon tour, and it cost us $35 each. There is also a whole day option, costing $65.
Thank you. You really helped me a lot.
With pleasure. Do enjoy your trip.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 2. You will hear the managing director of a company called Stevenson's welcoming a group of work experience students. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Good morning everyone and welcome to Stevenson's, one of the country's major manufacturers of metal goods. Thank you for choosing us for your 2 weeks of work experience. My name is Julia Simmons and since the beginning of this year I've been the managing director. Stevenson's is quite an old company. Like me, the founder, Ronald Stevenson, went into the steel industry when he left school. That was in 1923. He set up this company when he finished his apprenticeship in 1926, although he actually started making plans 2 years earlier in 1924. He was a very determined young man. Stevenson's long-term plan was to manufacture components for the machine tools industry, although in fact that never came about, and for the automotive industry, that is cars and lorries. However, there was a delay of 5 years before that happened, because shortly before the company went into production, Stevenson was given the opportunity to make goods for hospitals and other players in the healthcare industry. So that's what we did for the first 5 years. Over the years, we've expanded the premises considerably. We were lucky that the site is big enough, so moving to a new location has never been necessary. However, the layout is far from ideal for modern machinery and production methods, so we intend to carry out major refurbishment of this site over the next 5 years. I'd better give you some idea of what you'll be doing during your 2 weeks with us, so you know what to expect. Most mornings you'll have a presentation from one of the managers to learn about their department, starting this morning with research and development. And you'll all spend some time in each department, observing what's going on and talking to people, as long as you don't stop them from doing their work altogether. In the past, a teacher from your school has come in at the end of each week to find out how the group were getting on, but your school isn't able to arrange that this year.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
OK, now I'll briefly help you to orientate yourselves around the site. As you can see, we're in the reception area, which we try to make attractive and welcoming to visitors. There's a corridor running left from here, and if you go along that, the door facing you at the end is the entrance to the coffee room. This looks out onto the main road on one side and some trees on the other, and that'll be where you meet each morning. The factory is the very big room on the far side of the site. Next to it is the warehouse, which can be accessed by lorries going up the road to the turning area at the end. You can get to the warehouse by crossing to the far side of the courtyard, and then the door is on your right. Somewhere you'll be keen to find is the staff canteen. This is right next to reception. I can confidently say that the food's very good, but the view isn't. The windows on one side look onto a corridor and courtyard, which aren't very attractive at all, and on the other onto the access road, which isn't much better. You'll be using the meeting room quite often, and you'll find it by walking along the corridor to the left of the courtyard and continuing along it to the end. The meeting room is the last one on the right, and I'm afraid there's no natural daylight in the room. Then you'll need to know where some of the offices are. The Human Resources Department is at the front of this building, so you head to the left along the corridor from reception, and it's the second room you come to. It looks out onto the main road. And finally, the boardroom, where you'll be meeting sometimes. That has quite a pleasant view, as it looks out onto the trees. Go along the corridor past the courtyard, right to the end. The boardroom is on the left, next to the factory. OK, now, are there any questions before we move?
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 2.
turn to section 3 on page 114. Test 5, section 3. In this section, you will hear an interview with a wildlife specialist called Alison Sharp talking about bears. In the first part of the discussion, they are talking about the history of the bear. First, look at questions 21 to 23. Now listen to the first part of the interview and answer questions 21 to 23.
Alison Sharp has spent much of her life researching bears, and in particular, bears in danger of extinction. She is the author of a recent book on bears, and we welcome her to the studio today.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
First of all, can you give us a quick overview of the history of the bear family?
Well, the bears we know today actually have as their ancestors bears which have been evolving for some 40 million years. We have fossils of the earliest true bear, and it's important to emphasize this because some creatures are called bears but are not.
Such as koalas, for instance.
Yes, exactly. Fossils of the true bear show a small dog-sized animal with characteristics that show a blending of dog and bear traits.
So the general belief is that dogs and bears were of the same family?
Yes, that's the theory. And then we see the arrival of the early cave bear. We know from cave drawings that Neanderthal man used to worship this bear, and at the same time fear it.
Understandable, perhaps.
Yes, but they need not have worried because the cave bear only ate plants.
Ah.
In fact, the cave bear survived 2 ice ages, but then became extinct.
In the second part of the interview, Alison talks more about the situation of bears today. Look at questions 24 to 30 first. Listen carefully and answer questions 24 to 30.
So, how many bears can we find today? And are any of them in danger of extinction?
Well, I'll answer your first question first. There are 8 species of bear in all, among them the American black bear and the brown bear, from which evolved the newest species of bear, the polar bear.
So, how old is the polar bear?
Oh, he's a relative newcomer, just 20,000 years old.
And could you tell us a little about them? Which is the largest bear, for instance?
Well, the largest bear existing today is either the polar bear or the brown bear.
Right. Don't we know?
Well, it depends which criteria you use. The polar bear is the heaviest. The male weighs up to 1,500 pounds, but his narrow body actually makes him look smaller than the much more robust brown bear.
So the brown bear appears the biggest?
Yes.
And the smallest?
Well, the sun bear is the smallest of the 8 species. They only weigh between 60 and 145 pounds.
That makes him a comparative junior.
Yes. And then next we have the so-called giant panda. But that's a small bear too, comparatively speaking.
And are all bears meat eaters?
No, not at all. In fact, the giant panda is almost entirely herbivorous, living on a diet of 30 types of bamboo.
Ah, yes, of course. Pandas are famous for that.
And another interesting bear is the sloth bear, which eats insects, particularly termites. He can turn his mouth into a tube and suck the insects out of their nests.
So, going back to my second question, are bears really in danger of extinction?
Yes, indeed, they are. The sun bear in particular, as they've been hunted almost out of existence. And the habitat of the panda is also being reduced on a daily basis.
Can anything be done to reduce the threat to these endangered species? I know, for instance, that it's very hard to breed bears in captivity.
Yes. Well, I think that by raising people's awareness generally, we can reduce conflict between humans and animals, to stop the slaughter in parts of the world where bears are still hunted, supposedly in self-defense or to protect livestock, but often quite unnecessarily. And we can also encourage governments to preserve the natural environment of the bear, rather than allow the areas where they live to be systematically destroyed in the name of progress.
Yes, of course.
And in addition to these global efforts, all profits from the sale of my book will go toward the United Nations Bear Protection Program.
That's wonderful. And with the news coming up, thank you for your time, Alison, and best of luck with the book.
Thank you very much.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 4. You will hear a student giving a presentation about a type of tree known as the eucalyptus, which is common in Australia. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today, I'm going to talk about the eucalyptus tree. This is a very common tree here in Australia, where it's also sometimes called the gum tree. First, I'm going to talk about why it's important. Then I'm going to describe some problems it faces at present. Right, well, the eucalyptus tree is an important tree for lots of reasons. For example, it gives shelter to creatures like birds and bats, and these and other species also depend on it for food, particularly the nectar from its flowers. So it supports biodiversity. It's useful to us humans too, because we can kill germs with a disinfectant made from oil extracted from eucalyptus leaves. The eucalyptus grows all over Australia, and the trees can live for up to 400 years. So it's alarming that all across the country, numbers of eucalyptus are falling because the trees are dying off prematurely. So, what are the reasons for this? One possible reason is disease. As far back as the 1970s, the trees started getting a disease called Mundula yellows. The tree's leaves would gradually turn yellow, then the tree would die. It wasn't until 2004 that they found the cause of the problem was lime, or calcium hydroxide, to give it its proper chemical name, which was being used in the construction of roads. The lime was being washed away into the ground and affecting the roots of the eucalyptus trees nearby. What it was doing was preventing the trees from sucking up the iron they needed for healthy growth. When this was injected back into the affected trees, they immediately recovered. But this problem only affected a relatively small number of trees. By 2000, huge numbers of eucalyptus were dying along Australia's east coast of a disease known as bell miner-associated dieback. The bell miner is a bird, and the disease seems to be common where there are high populations of bell miners. Again, it's the leaves of the trees that are affected. What happens is that insects settle on the leaves and eat their way round them, destroying them as they go, and at the same time they secrete a solution which has sugar in it. The bell miner birds really like this solution, and in order to get as much as possible, they keep away other creatures that might try to get it. So these birds and insects flourish at the expense of other species, and eventually so much damage is done to the leaves that the tree dies. But experts say that trees can start looking sick before any sign of bell miner-associated dieback. So it looks as if the problem might have another explanation. One possibility is that it's to do with the huge bushfires that we have in Australia. A theory proposed over 40 years ago by ecologist William Jackson is that the frequency of bushfires in a particular region affects the type of vegetation that grows there. If there are very frequent bushfires in a region, this encourages grass to grow afterwards, while if the bushfires are rather less frequent, this results in the growth of eucalyptus forests. So why is this? Why do fairly frequent bushfires actually support the growth of eucalyptus? Well, one reason is that the fire stops the growth of other species which would consume water needed by eucalyptus trees. And there's another reason. If these other quick-growing species of bushes and plants are allowed to proliferate, they harm the eucalyptus in another way by affecting the composition of the soil and removing nutrients from it. So some bushfires are actually essential for the eucalyptus to survive as long as they are not too frequent. In fact, there's evidence that Australia's Indigenous people practiced regular burning of bushland for thousands of years before the arrival of the Europeans. But since Europeans arrived on the continent, the number of bushfires has been strictly controlled. Now, scientists believe that this reduced frequency of bushfires to low levels has led to what's known as dry rainforest, which seems an odd name as usually we associate tropical rainforest with wet conditions. And what's special about this type of rainforest? Well, unlike tropical rainforest, which is a rich ecosystem, this type of ecosystem is usually a simple one. It has very thick, dense vegetation, but not much variety of species. The vegetation provides lots of shade, so one species that does find it ideal is the bell miner bird, which builds its nests in the undergrowth there. But again, that's not helpful for the eucalyptus tree.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the Ielts test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.